Hello and welcome to Ben Omtad, a podcast of open-minded thought and discussion. Here I recount and discuss folk tales, myths, and philosophy with various people, hoping to grow through dialogue and bring forth truth, wisdom, and insight in the interaction. Okay, great. Yeah, so I'm with Ian here, and we're going to summarize the Franz Xavier von Schönwerth's story, The King's Bodyguard, and then we'll talk about it. So there was a king that appointed his handsomest soldier as his bodyguard, and he dispatched him to a rich nobleman who had a beautiful daughter that he protected from everyone, telling her, Anna, don't exchange a single word with a soldier. But as things happened to go, the soldier and Anna started talking, and they got in on intimate terms with each other. And the bodyguard asked the nobleman for his daughter's hand. At first, he was furious because Anna was his only daughter, but eventually some time passed and Anna gave birth to a sweet little prince. And so then the nobleman told the guard, You have to reach the top of the mountain made of glass and steal three golden feathers from the dragon, and then you can marry my daughter. So the guard began the long march to the mountain. It took him 3 years in total. In the first year, he went through a kingdom, and the king knew that he was on the way to the dragon, and he told him to ask the dragon about a golden chain that he had lost. And the soldier could not pass through the kingdom until he agreed to that. A year later, he was given another task by another king who had a fig tree that bore no fruit, and he was to ask the dragon why. And then in the third year, he met two ferrymen who wondered how long they would have to keep rowing across the river until the curse on them was lifted. So finally, he reached the glass mountain, and Dragon wasn't home, but Dragon's wife was home. So he told her told her his story, what he's looking for. So she was a little hemming and hawing. She said she's not really supposed to let anyone in the house. Husband's going to be mad when he gets back. So guard pleaded with her, and she finally let him hide. And when the dragon came home, he ate and he fell asleep. When he was sleeping, the dragon wife pulled a golden feather from his tail, and he woke up. Why'd you give me a shove? Oh, she said, I was just dreaming about a king who lost a golden chain, and he wanted to know where it was. And Dragon said, It's at the bottom of a very dark dungeon. If it stayed there for one more year, it would belong to me. And then he went back to sleep. Wife pulled out a second feather. Why are you pinching me? And she said she was dreaming about a fig tree that doesn't bear fruit. And the dragon said, Well, there's a forbidden fruit buried beneath it. With the third feather, she told him about the ferrymen, and he said next time they take someone across the river, they have to shout, We're free. So Bodyguard has the three feathers. He goes back home. After the two rowers brought him back across the river, uh, he told them their solution and he freed them. And then next was the king with the fig tree. Guard told him about that. King rewards him with an army and lots of money. And then a year later, it takes him 3 years to get back to. A year later, he reached the first king who had been looking for his lost chain. And the king start digging in the right place, and he got it. Um, so the young man had been away for 6 years, and in that time, the nobleman had actually gone broke and he was selling dishes. And the guard wanted to get revenge. And so he told his soldiers to break all the dishes in the marketplace. And the nobleman got upset, and the guard threw money at his feet and said, "Here you go, old man, buy yourself some new dishes." And the next day, the same thing happened. The guard destroyed all the dishes again, or had the dishes destroyed. And he said, "Have you figured out who I am?" And the nobleman still did not recognize him until the guard showed him the three feathers taken from the dragon. Then the nobleman thanked him and said he was sorry. And now, of course, he was finally willing to let the king's bodyguard marry his daughter. And the nobleman got a good position at court, and everyone lived happily ever after.
But the end.
Yeah. Yeah, you were saying that this story, you were saying offline that this story is a little bit like someone telling a story drunk or something like that. Is that because it's kind of a little disjointed? You mentioned it doesn't have very much kind of detail to it.
Yeah, it just to me it just kind of like there are some bits I'm always analyzing these things logically just on how the pieces fit together, not like whether it makes sense, but just like internal story logic, you know?
Mm, mm,
Because oftentimes when I do that, I'll notice intricate little relationships between things that sort of like expand the meaning of the story. It's an
mm.
attempt to try and make sense of it, not to like
Yeah,
police to make sure, you know?
yeah.
But this one, it feels like I mean, I could just be missing it. I'm not trying saying I'm,
Mm,
it's all I'm the arbiter of what makes sense and what doesn't, but it doesn't make
mm,
sense to me.
mm,
In a few places where like the king appoints his most handsome of soldiers as a bodyguard, as his
mm,
bodyguard. So he's the king's bodyguard. And then one day he dispatches him to protect a noble. So like in and of itself, I'm a little bit confused there. Like, what is the king doing? I can't think of like the reasoning behind the king's decision. Um, and there's some confusion about Anna gives birth to a prince, but she's not a queen, she's not a princess, she's just a nobleman's daughter.
mm,
And then at the end, just to kind of stick on this same thread, at the end we have the nobleman, the sort of jerk dad, being given a good position at court. Um, I mean, I guess maybe the king's happy that after 6 years, his bodyguard finally got to marry the girl that he loved, and so he's like, "All right, you finally let that happen, nobleman. So now we'll give you a position at court." Um, but yeah, just the connective tissue seems a little loose, and that's usually one of the places where I can really find some meaning deeper in the story.
mm,
Yeah, but even that, like I would say, um, the it's sort of an interesting relationship there where you have the king, who's the king of the land of the kingdom that this takes place in. He's kind of the highest person in the fairy tale, except maybe the dragon, because the dragon seems to be in
mm,
charge, like he's watching out over things in all the kingdoms. But
mm,
this he's the king of like the main kingdom where the main characters come from. And he's got a bodyguard. So the bodyguard isn't royalty, but the bodyguard is attached to the king's house. And then the king sends that bodyguard over to the nobleman, who's like a step down from the king. So in a certain sense, like the influence of the bodyguard into the nobleman's household is
mm,
something coming from the king down to the nobleman.
mm,
But at the same time, he's, I assume, a commoner. I mean, they say the bodyguard was sure to be nothing but a fortune hunter,
mm,
despite the fact that he's employed by a bodyguard as a bodyguard for this king.
Mm.
But who's to say? Um, he's still a soldier, so he's got this sort of like lower social status at the same time. And I was kind of just thinking about that because if you wanna take these as like, different parts of the psyche or whatever, or just different things that are in relationship to each other, the thing that does differentiate them here are their social standings.
Mm.
So you've got like the king and the bodyguard and the nobleman and the nobleman's daughter, and then also the solderness of the bodyguard. Um, and I'm not sure if there's anything to sort of conclusions to be drawn from that, but I feel like it kind of paints the nobleman in a bad light in that he's dismissive of this person, this force, this sort of thing that has come into his household, um, as a gift from something higher up.
Mm.
And there's sort of shades of like not recognizing what he has, what he's received,
Yeah.
rejecting something from the king, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Something
Um,
beautiful from the king, the most handsome of his soldiers. So,
exactly, exactly. And his daughter, um, his daughter clearly values the bodyguard. And this is one of the few fairy tales I've read where like what I want to find the words here. Um, they were on intimate terms with each other. So the first they're on intimate terms, then he asks for marriage, her hand in marriage is denied, and then she gives birth to a sweet little prince.
Mhm.
So clearly they weren't being metaphorical with the intimate terms. And that's not common for a fairy tale. I think it's often a little more chaste than that.
Yeah.
And then they live happily ever after, and then they have kids somewhere on the other side of that, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Um, but like to kind of bring it back to what I was saying before, you have this nobleman rejecting this gift from the king, but the nobleman's daughter, the sort of if we're looking at the nobleman's household as like sort of a sub level down from the king level, the nobleman's daughter, the feminine aspect of it is welcoming of this gift to the point where
Mm.
something generative happens, something
Mm.
creative happens. There's new life in the household.
Mm.
And so like that's a good thing, but the nobleman himself is sort of a tyrannical leader in
Mm.
this regard, and that there's this new thing that's coming in and he's sort of rejecting it.
Mhm.
And so the new thing therefore has to go on the energy that would come in and rejuvenate his household has to go on a quest to, like you were saying before we started, sort of go through all the kingdoms and solve all these problems.
Mm.
And I'm not really sure what to make of the dragon or the problems, but maybe when we get to those, we can get to those. And then
Mm.
he comes back and he's sort of recognized for what he is.
Mhm.
So I think that's maybe the strongest thing I can paint as far as like the gesture of the whole story is sort of this new energy finally being recognized, kind of raising itself up to the point where it has more power than the reigning, um, the sort of tyrannical leader, and then the tyrannical leader has to sort of accede, give into give
Mhm.
into the bodyguard, and then there's the happily ever after.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean that makes sense to me too. Um, you mentioned how the nobleman is kind of a tyrannical leader. He seems like he's trying to protect his daughter Anna, not just from this soldier, but from any soldier. So any sort of strong, noble kind of youth, or he's overprotective, and so that's why I kind of, you see that theme also with the dragon. And so you have these people hoarding these things that are to be good or useful for others. The golden chain of the first king on the travels of the soldier, and the fig tree, and the two men who are the farriers. That all these people are trapped in some way, and so um, once they're freed from these hoarding, um, higher level authorities, then they can, then they can be more good and useful. And that's what the the beauty, the beautiful print, the beautiful bodyguard is able to do. I'm just thinking of maybe something about truth, beauty, and goodness here. The overall goodness of the story increases after the bodyguard kind of unfastens or unsticks a lot of the forces and people of the story. And so that's the spreading of beauty. The king, the first authority, the king, he plucks out the handsomest soldier. So he's getting sort of beauty, and then as you were saying, he brings it down to like the next level down to the nobleman. And then yes, as you were saying, the nobleman kind of rejects it, but then he does find a way. He's kind of forced to by maybe the feminine aspect of him, his daughter.
Hmm. Hmm.
When she has a child, he's forced to go forward. He had just wanted to stop. Let's keep everything as it is. You're my beautiful daughter. You're just going to stay with me until I'm dead. And then, so then yeah, they generate something, and then he's forced to make the soldier do something, and then that actually, I would argue, benefits the soldier too by giving him mature development, and at the same time unsticking and helping everybody else in surrounding lands, including all the way up to maybe the ultimate ruler in a way of this whole region, the dragon of the glass mountain.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. 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 There's definitely, I like your comparison of the hoarding by the dragon and by the nobleman, that they're both, you could say like, you could paint the journey of the bodyguard through the kingdoms to the mountain as like a dream. It's very kind of fantastic, and then the dragon becomes this sort of symbolization of the 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 nobleman, and and the dragon's wife who helps out the bodyguard is sort of like the nobleman's daughter, in, I mean, in kind of an odd way. Father, daughter, husband, wife is not necessarily a good comparison, but dreams are weird.
Yeah.
And in sort of having her, because for all the bodyguard's good deeds, like he doesn't really do much, or at least
Yeah.
he's not described as doing much.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was When I first read this, I was like, "Ooh, a glass mountain! Like, what is that about?" I've heard that in other fairy tales, and it's always kind of fascinated me as a symbol because, um, what what is it like? I don't know how to picture it. Like, is it melted glass that has formed into a mountain shape?
Yeah.
So it's like smooth and hard to climb, or is it like a mountain made up of broken panes of glass, so you always cut yourself on it, or is it just like a slick slope that you can never walk up? It's it clearly symbolizes a challenge and a dangerous one of some sort, but as far as like anything beyond that, I'm not sure how to really pull some symbolism out of it.
Mm.
For that being the guy's big challenge, go to the glass mountain and confront the dragon. He like goes to the glass mountain and knocks on a door, says, "Hey, I need some help." "No, no, please, I need some help." "Oh, thank you. Yum yum food. I'm gonna take a nap." And then he wakes up and he leaves. Like, we should all be so lucky on our heroic quests.
Mm.
Um, but nonetheless, he does resolve everyone's issues, and
Mm.
that is a heroic undertaking, is to sort of, like you said, kind of unstick the problems that are in the surrounding kingdoms.
Mm.
So yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, he doesn't, like in some Knight's Tales or something, he doesn't have to fight the dragon. I sort of thought of it as maybe heroic, though, in how he does have to climb the mountain. He does have to be away and on his journey for 6 years. He has to fulfill other people's tasks. And yeah, it's like a persistence. There's some danger involved, and he just has to be away for a long time. But yeah, he
Mhm.
doesn't have to like fight a dragon or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, that's interesting putting it that way. It's like the story highlights things that are, I would say, kind of more realistic in that
Mm.
if you are behaving in heroic fashion, if you are trying to be heroic, like you can't run around looking for fights. You know,
Yeah.
like that's the fun part of the story. But in real life, like you do have to care for other people. And this story focuses entirely on how he cares for other people and sort of serves them, helps them out rather than helping himself out.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And I mean, you would want a hero to fight the dragon if necessary, but not if not necessary. If they fought the dragon and it's not necessary, they're not heroic. They're maybe a villain, maybe causing much harm that's unnecessary. But yeah, the it's not
Mhm.
like the dragon is hoarding stuff on the glass mountain that the bodyguard needs to kill him to take away or something like that. He's just got power over people in surrounding kingdoms, and all he the soldier just gets what he needs. He just gets the secret, and then yes, he gets it in a sort of sly way, by going through the wife. So,
Mhm.
and that's all you need to do. And yeah, that does seem like the better hero. I mean, if you need to do something, do it in the least harmful, the most intelligent way possible.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And he does do it very like respectfully. Like he doesn't even pull the feathers off. The wife does that,
Yeah.
you know. So he kind of I mean, it doesn't say that he charmed the wife with his good looks, but if he is the most handsome of the king's men, maybe he was charming. Who knows? Who knows?
I would think so. And I think if we want to get somewhat Freudian or something, you could talk about the different relationships here. And that one stuck out to me as the most sort of semi-personal or something. Besides obviously getting with the nobleman's daughter.
Hmm.
He does, yeah, just that, that young virile handsome man, and the wife of the dragon is home alone, and so there is some sort of maybe tension or some sort of wanting to help him out kind of thing going on. So and that brings to light another part of the story for me, which is sort of just the naturalness of things. Beauty comes from nature,
Hmm.
and the beauty of this king's bodyguard is what presumably gets him in favor with the king in some way. And then with the nobleman's daughter, maybe there's jealousy of the nobleman there, and then but then he's sent away, and he actually does better than if he had just been allowed to just be natural, just to
Hmm.
marry the nobleman's daughter and stay in his hometown his whole life. As you mentioned, he wasn't doing much before. Like he said to be the king's handsomest bodyguard, not the most experienced or the most skillful. He's not like the sharpshooter in the Shamat Razum story, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He's just kind of, maybe he's like 17 years old and he's technically a soldier, but he hasn't really done much, to serve any lord or any authority or anything. So then yeah, I feel ambivalent about the sort of hoarding of the nobleman because of his daughter, because he does end up doing better for everybody. Through the king's bodyguard, he solves everybody's problem.
Hmm. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I guess if you look at it from like a more, bird's eye view, like I mean, you said this already, but like the bodyguard does go through like a maturation process, but by doing so, like he does help the kingdom. So in that sense, the nobleman is doing a favor for everyone by saying like, no, you're not ready. Go make yourself ready to be worthy of my daughter. And in doing so, he manages to kind of clean up a lot of problems in the area
Yeah.
that aren't directly that he wouldn't have, like you said, that he wouldn't have noticed otherwise.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's neat. That's neat. I definitely had not thought of that. I get
And
sort of hung up on the fact that it's like he's the most beautiful because I think, our culture is such a celebrity worship culture
mm,
that it's like I hear beautiful and I'm like, oh, people's sexiest man alive. Like, sure, that's a thing and like good for them, but it's not the same value that I would put on like the good, the true, and the beautiful
yeah.
in that sense. It's not an aesthetic thing per se, but that's not to say it's not that's not to say I'm looking at it the right way. I think especially given that these are much older tales, like I think he would be held up as more of an ideal, kind of the way you're talking about it, than the sort of celebrity culture that I had sort of just in my head when I was thinking about it.
Yeah. 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 We have so much built up with celebrity culture. There's maybe someone who's beautiful on the outside, and then there's plastic surgery, and there's marketing, and there's hype in big groups, has this emotional effect. I mean, we're maybe getting away from just a natural beauty that maybe just has an effect on people, and if it's used right, can lead to good relationships and not to too much jealousy and good things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. And the sort of the need to elevate it above just the common level also makes more sense there. Where if we are talking, common beauty versus like skilled beauty or processed beauty or matured beauty, um, evolved, so to speak, developed, et cetera, et cetera. Um, that's sort of what we can see going on here. Um, but I don't know. What did you think about the dragon? I found him kind of interesting, just in that I mean, you're spot on about the Jack and the Beanstalk vibe, but he's just a sort of like grumbly, like apparently he's got golden feathers on his tail, but other than that, there's no description of him at all, other than just calling him a dragon. And he could very easily just be like, go get 3 hairs of a giant, go get, I can't think of anything else off the top of my head, but like there's not a lot of reason for him to be a dragon. But I like the idea of this big house on this mountain with this guy hiding somewhere in the corner and the wife, and then this like big dragon comes in, and I don't know, he's got this kind of S-shaped curve in my head, and he's
Mm,
sort of like walking around, big arms. I don't know. I don't know where that comes from, but that's just kind of how I'm picturing him. And it's neat to see him. I think it's neat. I think it's neat that he just sort of comes through and has all the answers, and like there's no explanation of why he has the answers, but he's just the place to go when you have a problem. But he doesn't want to give solutions. He just sort of hoards them. I don't know. I don't know if you have anything to say about that. Just him as a figure.
mm. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm thinking of him in terms of Jack and the Beanstalk. And so you have to make a lot of effort and have faith in well, I guess Jack and the Beanstalk, he has faith when he sacrifices their last possession to get the beans.
Hmm.
In this story it's a little different because so he is told to do this thing because you will get this if you complete this task. So it's a task, it's less open-ended, it's less based on faith. It's not really based on faith. He has some confidence, some faith in himself, and he can go forward. But yeah, it's not exactly the same thing. But I guess making it a dragon, I mean, isn't a dragon on the base level a mysterious being? It's a chimerical beast. It's made of different parts. It can be interpreted in different ways, and it will still be greater than the sum of its parts and all your interpretations. It's sort of this, it's like would comparing it to a demon or a god be right, or it's just something that goes beyond your our comprehension, right? So he goes to the dragon, and the dragon, as you mentioned, knows everything, you know, especially when he's in his dream state. He's almost like an Indian god or something like that. It's he's dreaming the world, or he's
Yeah, yeah.
connected in some deep way. Um, and then yeah, all you have you pluck his feathers, you you wake him up, and he'll just tell you what you need, and he'll be increasingly upset, so you can't do it too much. But if at least if his wife does it, then he just gives you the secret to everybody's problems. Like, oh, it's just these people have been racking their brains about this fig tree that no one can figure out why it won't bear fruit. It's barren. It's this thing that should be full of life, that should be feeding us all, and that we love in some way, but it's poisoned in some way. Something is terribly wrong, and he just gives you that knowledge. So
Mhm. Mhm.
that to me is the difference between the dragon, which is on the glass, mountain, which is also this mysterious thing. It'd be interesting if we could figure out something about that symbolism. I too have kind of no idea what it means, except it's not a regular mountain, so it's artificial in some way. Unlike the beanstalk and the cloud, presumably the cloud people have these ideas about you can't see it, and maybe someone lives up there or a god lives up there or something. But the glass mountain is something artificial, something very. It's a strange image, whether it's smooth glass in one piece or many pieces or a bunch or shards all piled up on top of each other. It's an incomprehensible maybe image. I'm just thinking of how the dragon itself is incomprehensible and the source of knowledge. So those
Mhm.
are the only things that I can come up with about the dragon, like just on first thinking about it.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like that. I like you were like comparing it to like a demon or a god, and it had me remember the I think it's a myth from the I don't know if you'd call it a myth actually. It's anthropological work with I think some of the Bushmen in Africa. They would talk about sort of journeying to visit God, to visit like the you know the main spirit. And the I wish I could remember the source of this or have more details, but this is something I read a long time ago and it's just always stuck with me.
Mm,
So all I can pull from is like the part that lodged in me. I don't have the data surrounding it. But
mm,
the part that lodged in me was the story that when you go into the house of God or whatever term they would have used for it,
mm.
you want to make yourself very small. You want to make yourself very, very small because uh, God is so big and so powerful that if you're not small, you're in danger. And that stuck with me because from at least not to say that I understand it, but the way that it stuck with me was this idea of like, oh, God is this like or divinity or the dragon that has all the answers or the place you go when you're stuck. Like it's very powerful, and if you're going to access it, you have to be in right relationship to it. Like, and
Yeah.
not morally right, but just like I almost want to say like electrochemically right. Like if you're gonna connect to a powerful positive electrical charge, you have to be a negative charge. You if you want to connect to something very big and powerful, you have to be very small. You have to understand yourself as very small in relationship to it. I mean, now I'm thinking of like 12-step programs and the idea of a higher power, surrendering your life to a higher power, a higher power, something bigger. So that makes you smaller. That creates this relationship, that creates this sort of different perspective of who you are and like how you are in the world. So going in
Yeah.
to meet the dragon, going into if the dragon is sort of a stand-in for God, going in to meet God and God being very large and the bodyguard being very small, and him hiding and him sort of mediating that with, the with God's wife. So sort of a who's a little more safe. She's a little more welcoming. She's a little more open. She's not quite so like Zeus with the thunderbolts. She's a little more chill. So that sort of, and the Glass Mountain too. I mean, if I think of it as like I look off in the distance and like where I live in the Pacific Northwest, we have a lot of mountains. I can see Mount Hood, not from my window, but driving around, I can see Mount Hood. And it's so if I think of it as like, what if that was made of glass? Just clear. Like one, the light would shine right through it. So it's got this sort of illuminated nature to it, this sort of transparent, kind of unreal nature to it. But then also, like from here, the mountain slopes look smooth. They're not, the peak is jagged, but you look at the mountain and you can see, it's this cone shape. And so if you were to think of like a cone shape of glass, it becomes something that, like if I were to think of that mountain as made of glass, I would immediately, the thing that would occur to me is like, I can never walk up that mountain. I'd slip. I'd slip anytime there was rain, anytime anything got wet in the morning, the dew, whatever you want to call it. Like I would just slip and slide all the way down. And it would be this sort of like endless toil trying to get anywhere. And you could say that's similar to like if you're trying to approach God or if you're trying to get to heaven, there's this sort of like impossible distance between you and that sort of higher realm. Um, but not that impossible, I guess, since he does end up there.
No,
Um,
no, I think that's a,
yeah.
oh, go ahead, please.
No, I was just gonna say, but that's all I got.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
no, I think that's really good. Both those points. I mean, the bodyguard is able to get up there, but he was specifically appointed. He has gone through suffering. He has been shunned by the nobleman. He has had to wait 3 years to get there, and he is still. And this is a special person too. He was the most something, the most handsome in this case of the king's soldiers. So only a special person who has suffered in different ways and gone through this long journey can get there.
Yeah.
Because
And does it for other
mm,
people too.
I'm sorry.
He does it for other people. Like the interaction
Yeah,
with the
yeah,
dragon is very much like, how do I solve these other people's problems?
yes, yeah,
So it's
that's
an act
right.
of service. And then through the service, he gets the feathers, but he never actually, nobody ever says, "Hey, dragon, can I have your feathers? I need your
Yeah.
feathers."
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Can you just give me some power? Can you? And that's maybe some way people pray now sometimes. It's like maybe a warning, like don't just ask the God for to solve your problems.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's right. And that makes me realize that he didn't know his whole task until he traveled through these different lands and they gave him the task. You cannot leave until you promise to ask the dragon to find my golden chain, and etc. Then he really has his task of getting the feathers and also helping all these other people with their myriad problems
Hmm.
that he helps
Hmm.
them with truth. The beauty goes and develops virtue, persistence, goodness through that, and then gets the truth from the God figure, from the dragon.
Yeah. 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 He goes. So like, if we look at it, there's like the king has something. Well, that's kind of interesting. I don't know. I might be stretching here, but the second king, the first king that he runs into with the gold chain, like he's lacking something beautiful. He's lost something beautiful of his, a golden chain. I don't know if that's like a chain, like a necklace, or like a physical
Hmm.
chain for whatever purpose you would want a golden chain for.
Hmm.
But he's clearly missing it, and gold kind of denotes beauty. I mean, that's not much.
Yeah.
There's not much else there, beauty or purity or something like that. And then the second king has a tree that is not fecund, that is not bringing forth what it's meant to.
Mm.
And you sort of have the nobleman there. I mean, the daughter does have a child, but it's a forbidden child because they're outside of wedlock. So there's like a weird, I just figure it's just seeing this weird sort of alignment between the second king's fig tree and the nobleman's daughter. And then the two ferrymen, the fact that there's two, I don't know, one would work for this just as well, but the
Yeah.
ferrymen are engaged in acts of service and they're cursed to continue doing it until their curse is lifted, which is a symbol for the bodyguard. He's meant to serve the king. He's maybe that's the two ferrymen. He's serving the king or he's serving the nobleman. In either cases, he's serving. And how long do we have to keep serving these people? How long do I have to keep playing this role? I'm under a curse. Um, what frees me of my curse? And the secret there is you finish your service. You do your duty, and once your duty is done, you say I'm free. You just choose to take your power back,
Yeah.
and that's what
Yeah.
the bodyguard does when he comes back into the marketplace.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah, that's neat. That was live, folks.
Yeah, yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
Another thing I wanted to say from what you said is both with Jack and the Beanstalk and with this story, when he goes to the dragon's house, yeah, making himself small, that's right, because they both have to hide and they can only get what they need when the giant or when the dragon is asleep, like when it's in a more dormant state.
Mhm.
And this sort of like the opposite of what Dion in Dionysus last week's podcast, Dionysus mother Semele, I think.
Mhm.
But anyway, one of the consorts of Zeus, she had done the forbidden thing or the terribly unhealthy thing of asking to see Zeus in all his glory. So this is sort of the opposite. I want to be face to face with the God. I want the glory to shine on me
Mhm.
in my fullness. I'm not aware and I'm not I don't have proper fear of the Lord to make myself small and humble before the Lord.
Mhm.
And it
Mhm.
wasn't enough that Zeus loved her. She needed to see it. It's like she needed proof, or there's a little bit, yeah, there's too much of this spirit of wanting to see it, to believe it or something.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, very much like I love the comparison you're drawing because like the way I understand that Bushman story or wherever it is that I got that from, is like you have to go and make yourself small in order to relate properly to God. It's not so
Yeah.
much that like God is just another human that's gonna be pissed at you and punish you
Yeah.
if you're
Yeah.
not humble. It's like, no, that's not the nature of the relationship.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah.
not quite the same thing. If you're going to relate with the divine, you can only do it from a small place because that's the truth of it. In the same way that like I don't know, like if you step off a building and you fall 5 floors and you break your leg or you die, like you're not being punished for walking off a roof.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
It's not a moral decision. It's gravity has an effect. If you recognize that that's going to happen because the earth pulls you in, that's what it does. If you recognize that the divine is very powerful, and if you try and match it, you'll be similated. You'll be toasted. Or in the very least, you'll have your bones ground to make bread to bring
Yeah.
back, to bring back Jack into it. But instead, in Jack and the Beanstalk in here, it's interesting because he gets there and there is no monstrous divine figure, whatever it is. But the wife is there, so there's this sort of like relational nature is there, but the power isn't there. So
Hmm.
then the supplicant, the small one, goes and hides or sleeps or whatever,
Mm.
and but the need, his need is still communicated to the powerful deity
Yeah.
by the relational elements of the deity.
Yeah.
So the deity has to be home and in relationship with its relational element. Like the power has to be there in connection, but the power has to be sleeping, has to be quiescent. So you end up with like you can relate you have to have the divine there, but there's also this sort of chain of communication of flow that needs to happen, rather than a direct face-to-face standing up as equals, or especially with the Semele and Zeus is like oh well, you don't love me as much as your divine wife, but like prove to me you love me. I mean, that's very much like prove to me we're on the same level.
Yeah.
And sorry, lady, but he's a god, and I mean it works out well for her in the end, but it's rough for a while. It's rough for a while there, and I don't think we'd all be so lucky,
Yeah.
as simile or simile, or however you pronounce. I'm terrible
Hmm.
with Greek pronunciations.
I mean, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but that's cool. That's cool. I had not really put all those pieces together.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's a lot of this story is about proper relations. I mean, the king sees something beautiful amongst his soldiers, so he elevates it, brings it close to him. And
Mhm.
then he's a good king, so he passes it on to somebody else. But then that person doesn't know what to do with it. That person is threatened by it and doesn't know how to put two and two together with his beautiful daughter and the bodyguard. So then he sends him away. But I'm still wondering about though his bad act actually does good for everybody else. So there's like some unconscious kind of maybe him following that tradition of sort of the young man needs to prove himself to seek his fortune or whatever needs to prove
Mhm.
himself to before he can be with the daughter is sort of maybe it's like his left brain thinking is actually helping out things there or something, but or following the tradition or something like that. But anyway, yeah, the your
Mhm.
point about a lot of this tale being about true relations, I think that's right. So then the beauty, the soldier goes on through this long journey. He's, he properly goes through the kingdoms. He's not rampaging. He's okay,
He's not
I'm
sneaking. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So, he meets with the king. Okay, the king needs this. You're traveling through my land to help yourself. You need to do this thing for me. Okay, yes. And then it works out. He goes up to the dragon. Yes, he has proper relations. He doesn't take the feathers outright. He goes through the intercessory of the king's, I mean the dragon's wife, and does it the proper way when the dragon's asleep and all that stuff. Yeah, that
yeah,
seems right. It's about right relations.
yeah, yeah. And I like what you're saying about the nobleman. Like what that says to me is like this the sort of the main character here that we're meant to sort of identify with is the bodyguard, right? And so the nobleman is being relatively the bad guy in the story. He is stopping the thing that naturally is already happening since they have a kid. That's not like, oh, I love her, but no, you can never be together. It's like, I love her and we've had sex and she's pregnant and that's my child. Maybe you want to do something about that. I don't know. No, okay. But but we can look at that as like a message for ourselves, like in our own life when something stymies our wishes, when we come up against something that feels like a resistance or a wall. Like that's not to say that the thing that is stopping us is inherently good in and of itself. It's behaving enlightened. It doesn't have to. But if we meet the resistance that it presents, come to some kind of an understanding with it, go on the way, that actually ends up being to our benefit and to the benefit of everything else because we're the ones fulfilling our duty righteously, right, in good spirits, willingly.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's something that you can see in a lot of like apocryphal biblical stories. Like if you,
Huh.
I've heard like, well, I don't know if it's apocryphal per se, but I think it was Borges had a story about, and I think maybe this is in some of the Gnostic books too, but about Judas basically being the best disciple, that he knew that Jesus would have to go through what he would have to go through, and he knew that for him to go through it, he would need to be betrayed. Like he couldn't willingly go. There had to be some kind of a subterfuge for the symbolism of Christ and his activity to actually manifest the way it needed to. There had to be a betrayal. And so the sort of Gnostic underground idea of it being that he willingly did that in order to help Christ fulfill his mission. And he gets, slandered for it and thrown in hell by everybody, up to Dante and beyond. Understandably, because if he really did do that, he's a jerk. But if something needs to happen and it's not going to happen without some resistance on the part of the nobleman, or some betrayal on the part of Judas, or I've heard a similar thing said about Lucifer, that the
Mm,
rebellion, there's something there, the snake in the garden tempting humanity, like humanity need to be tempted. We needed to fall in order to have this sort of adventure through the kingdoms and setting everything aright and kind of coming back home again, which you kind of see again in the Bible in the prodigal son. It's the son that runs away and then comes back that there's the feast for, rather
mm,
than the one that just stayed. So the nobleman, like you're saying, no, I'm sorry, the bodyguard, had he just married the nobleman's daughter, he would not have done all the work and known the situation of the lands around him and come prepared with an army and money, and like he comes back much stronger than when he left, which is not directly how the prodigal son works as a parable, but it does sort of paint the picture of the one who goes and comes back and is welcomed more strongly for having gone and come back than had
yeah.
had they never left.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. And in terms of the sort of usefulness of badness or even evil, this as a theme, with the prodigal son, for the prodigal son to come back having wasted everything, and not having bringing anything to the table for his father still welcoming him and loves him, shows the outpouring of unconditional love, that
Mhm.
that side of the fatherly love. I just love you because you're my son, not because you've gained something in the world and come back developed with more glory to shine on me for our family.
Mhm. Mhm.
And the Yeah, it seems like in this story, the sort of seemingly bad action of the nobleman helps to, yeah, develop the bodyguard. Bodyguard comes back, and then he helps to develop the nobleman in some way too, by shattering that barrier that maybe has something, shattering that barrier where he's protecting his daughter, that maybe has something to do with the plates, something like
I
that.
have a whole thought about that. I have a whole
Yeah.
thought about that.
Oh,
You go,
okay.
if you want to keep talking, go ahead. But I did have a thought about the plates.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, yeah, I
Yeah.
just wanted to say, in terms of the themes of this story kind of being useful for us. Also, I thought, uh, yeah, making yourself small before the divinity or before the cosmos or whatnot, I think that is something that we're really missing. And they talk about that as being part of psychedelic experiences and things, or um, you mentioned AA, part of its sort of groundingness or something is the relation to the something bigger than yourself, and therefore you are smaller, which I think is a big part of maybe where the healing or the growth in our culture will come from, with just how narcissistic we are. How, you mentioned celebrity being tied up with beauty so much. Um, and the last thing I wanted to mention was, the that relation to the divine and prayer. I thought that maybe sometimes so much of the way we pray is to ask for things to be handed down, and instead of maybe gratitude or proper communion with the divine.
Yeah.
But those are just the things that I wanted to mention.
Yeah. Well, no, I'll start off before I get into the plates thing, which I did have that ahead of time, and I am excited by it because it fits in with some of the other stuff that I didn't have in mind, so it feels better. But I do want to say that the move from asking to expressing gratitude is, I think, a really important one. Whether you're addressing the divine, or you're just working, ritually with spirits, or whatever it is that you're doing. Like, if there's no gratitude, you're not in proper relationship.
Yeah.
There's got to be a give and a take. There's got to be like and besides, if you're always going and you're always saying, I need this, I need this, I need this, like, you're so focused on what you don't have, and that just kind of, that's bad vibes.
Yeah.
Don't bring God bad vibes. Um,
Yeah.
just because, like, and not even from a punitive standpoint, but like, imagine some friend of yours is always coming around and being like, "Hey, I need this thing. Hey, I need this thing. Hey, I need this thing." Like, you'd be like, "Okay, man, it's that guy again. I wish he'd leave me alone." I mean, yes, God is not human, and God is this, what, as we were saying earlier, but proper relations still, and even more so if there is this all-powerful source of all the answers you could ever need to solve all the world's problems, and you just have to approach it humbly. Like, don't approach it with an attitude of like, give me this, I need this, i'm
Yeah.
i'm miserable, because that's so focused on yourself. I mean, even like we were saying, even the bodyguard doesn't say, hey, I need feathers. He says, hey, I need to find out about this chain, and I need to find out about this tree, and I need to find out about these ferrymen.
That's right. Yeah.
um so so there's that. But to get back to the dishes, when you were talking earlier about the nobleman hoarding things, I had been trying to figure out the symbolism of the dishes, because that's like one of the only strong items mentioned that I could make sense of. I mean, there's the fig tree that we kind of talked about, and the chain that we kind of talked about, and those kind of make more sense. But I was like, okay, so at the end, there's these dishes. Why are the dishes? He's fallen from his luck. He's selling dishes in the marketplace. Um, what if I enter into that character of the dish selling ex-nobleman? What
Mm.
is his life like? And I'm like, oh, well, dishes are breakable. This is medieval times, or, late Renaissance, or whenever it is, but they're breakable. You don't have like plastic bubble wrap for them. You don't have nicely made crates that fit them perfectly. Like, selling dishes is a dangerous thing, because if you spend money on them and they break, one breaks, or you drop a crate of them and you break all of them, you've got nothing. Like, maybe you can make a mosaic out of it or something pretty, but like, if you're a dish merchant, you're handling very precious goods, and you have to be cautious and careful and nervous all the time. You have to be hoarding. You have to be like, no, like, I gotta just be very, very mindful and careful. And he's treating his daughter the same way, like a precious little dish, and he's not letting it out. And then you have the bodyguard come back in his power, as this, with the army and everything, and he breaks the dishes. So he starts, the all of the noblemen's hoarding, all of the caution, all of the fear, all of the, no, I can't let my daughter marry. What if something bad happens? I have to protect her at all costs. And he's like, look, I've broken the dishes. I've knocked up your daughter. Would you just let me marry her? Like, stop being so precious about the whole thing. And the nobleman sort of having his dishes broken and not recognizing it, and the bodyguard has to come back a second day. I feel like that's a mirror of their relationship with the daughter. Is like, dude, your daughter's had a kid with this guy. Like, she's not your beautiful, pure, chaste daughter that you need to protect from all the soldiers anymore. Like, clearly she's been broken, not in a bad way, but like, that thing that you're so worried about happening has already happened. Just let
Yeah.
it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought that
Yeah.
was really neat.
No, that's cool. Yeah. Yeah. I didn't exactly know what to make of those dishes. Yeah. And that makes sense. Something fragile that he's trying to hoard, and then now he has to sell them. There's this idea that he has not been living properly and exchanging properly, like you do with trade or working or whatever. And so his estate has grown smaller and smaller to where he has to sell the thing that he's been protective of, that's fragile and everything. And then yes, instead of him following his little plan of selling his dishes and being able to go on for another couple of months or something, the bodyguard comes back and he breaks and he's like, no, all your plans are not working. Like your way of thinking is wrong. And also you're not seeing properly because he doesn't recognize the bodyguard. And it takes, like you said, a couple of times for him to finally recognize the bodyguard. Like he has to break all the, I don't know, the ways that he's been holding on to to the world improperly and not letting things, not having the right relation to the world and to the people around him. And finally, when that stuff is broken, now he can finally see, and then he regains prosperity, favor in the eyes of the king, of the authority of the land, by being granted the pension, or the place, the position in the court, I guess. And so everything's kind of right now, after that, after all that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we have the bodyguard coming back and even fixing the problem of his jerk father-in-law, so to speak. You know, like the
Yeah.
thing that started the person that started the whole problem off to begin with. He has his problems resolved by the bodyguard as well, even if it does require some broken plates.
Yeah.
It's still pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. That makes sense to me a lot, that what you said about it's the bodyguard shows the proper way to deal with the problem, to not resist it, to do what you need to do with it, to kind of he doesn't try to force the issue, although the issue gets a little forced by him and the daughter they're attracted to. They're forbidden for a while, and eventually they get together and they have a child. But yeah, he doesn't try to, I don't know, he doesn't do something drastic or something. He goes on this very long journey of 6 years to appease the father-in-law. Uh, so he suffers and tries to make things right with this hindrance that's really in his way.
Yeah, yeah, because he could just like abscond with the daughter. They could just run off together, or he could get the king to help him out, maybe, or he could try and circumvent the nobleman's sort of requirements, but he doesn't. He just sort of goes along with them, which is not to say we should always go along with tyrannical leadership, but if we're talking about internally, if there's something inside of you that you were trying to cause, or some sort of union with some part of yourself you're trying to realize, and something is blocking you, you have to, like you said, you have to treat that block as part of the journey towards union with the thing you're trying to bring together in yourself. You can't
Yeah.
push the block aside. You have to, even if it takes 6 years and a long journey, you gotta treat with what's there. You gotta work with what's there.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds right. And even if it's not, you don't view it psychologically, just I'm thinking of the kingdom as a whole, with him working with the nobleman instead, and and sort of appeasing him, doing his task. Then he can come back, and things still aren't right with his way of thinking. Then he can he's now in a position. He's done a lot of good in the world. He's matured and developed and grown a little older, and he can kind of crash those last barriers. And also, by waiting, the nobleman is in a better position because he's lost money and status. So he's in a better position to now more humbly accept the reality of his family situation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a good point. It's sort of the trustworthy element of reality, in the fact that like this guy lost his station, not so much as punishment, but as a way to prepare him for getting over the places that he's stuck. It's sort of in his own favor, and he's at odds with himself, and so at least in the story, the universe sets it up so that he's able to get that finally broken through, literally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that idea that reality kind of teaches you, and hopefully, or reality tries to teach you, and hopefully you learn.
Yeah. 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 it's a complicated thing because I believe that as a personal view on reality, like that's how I like to look at it when if something negative happens to me, I try to turn it in that perspective. But I also can't say, like if somebody gets cancer or somebody was abused by their father growing up or whatever, that like, oh well, you just have to accept that that's a barrier for you to deal. Like it doesn't. It's a it's an odd thing because I still believe it to be true. I still believe it to be helpful, but it can be very like misused as well for victim blaming and for justifying privilege and things like that. That like is not at all. That's not useful. That's not making good use of this particular mental tool. I think it can be useful even in those kinds of situations, potentially in that like if the person wants to use it that way, they can. But it's never something that I would want to insist somebody else believe. I
Yeah.
don't always believe it myself. Sometimes I feel very just at odds with, you know, pick something, whatever it is in my life that's bugging me that day. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, you don't, I mean, so we're partially talking about moral stances and even moral emotions, and those can be used in like an aggressive way. So you want to be careful, like the Jesus quote about looking at the plank in your own eye instead of blaming the chip on someone else's shoulder. I know that's sort of a little bit, there's maybe a little bit different meaning of that, but that reminds me of just how people will use moral emotions or moral stances or lessons to sort of judge others and not work on themselves. And yeah. And
Yeah.
mm. And yeah, I
Go
was
ahead, go
just
ahead. Yeah.
thinking from what you were saying that just it seems like the lesson of this story and this kind of thing of acceptance doesn't mean necessarily forever accepting the whole situation, but just first getting your bearings and accepting rather than reacting immediately. And then you can kind of see what steps might need to be taken. Like,
Mhm.
should is there a need for justice? Is there a need for to take someone down a peg or something like that? And I sort of think the bodyguard does do that, but at the proper time. And so that seems to be an indication that someone should, yeah, not react and accept how that what is, whether it's there's wrong parts to it or not. And then trying to go forward with wisdom and being willing to really sacrifice time and effort to try to make it right in the right way, where like the bodyguard did that, where the nobleman ended up being better after the 6 years, rather than maybe if he had been forced to accept the situation of the bodyguard and his daughter, maybe he would always hold that against them or something like that, and then when he finally falls and loses his fortune, he's messed up psychologically to where he can't be useful to the king anymore. He can't be useful to other people. He doesn't have a relationship with his daughter. Her kid doesn't know his grandfather. So like the way the king's bodyguard does it, he does everything's better in the end
Hmm.
if it's
Hmm.
possible. It's that seems like a good way to so not react and bring wisdom into it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think like obviously we can't always know the perfect moment. I don't mean that you're saying that, but like as a goal, as an ideal to strive for, or in the very least as a reason to consider the situation of everybody that's involved and try, as a way of accepting the situation, like you're saying, that makes a lot of sense just as a personal moral. Which also does, I wanted to say that also does kind of resolve my conundrum I was talking about before about like, well, if reality is kind of trustworthy and bad things are a way of um, sort of helping us prepare or grow or evolve or whatever, um, that's something that I can use as a personal moral thing for myself. And it's not something that I can use aggressively on somebody else. So
Yeah.
it's a way
Yeah.
to get the beam out of my eye if I'm lucky, if I'm real lucky, or at least start to work with whatever that is. But it's never something that should be turned on somebody else because that's none of my business. And I don't know what their situation is. I don't know what's going on inside of them. And trying to apply it from the outside doesn't even work because
That's
I don't
right.
have all the answers. So
That's right.
yeah. There's
Yeah. I
something in them that could be, but who knows what that is.
yeah. Yeah. I think I agree with all that. And I think, well, I mean, I don't know what you think, but I think when, interacting with other people about their problems, that's where maybe skill of dialogue can come into it, empathy, uh, you know, your social skills and everything. And if they are not seeing, if you think you can see something that you can bring to their attention that might help to shift their gears in the right way to where they might see more clearly or better, or they might be able to basically resolve things better or at least feel better. Um, that seems the right way to approach it rather than from the top down. Here's I'm going to tell you all about yourself that you don't know, and yeah, to
Let me,
have that skill. So
yeah, yeah. Let me explain all your problems to you and how to fix them. People hate that.
yeah,
Right, rightfully so. But I think what you're pointing to with the bodyguard, as far as like the way he meets the nobleman when the nobleman's ready, like that's definitely the way to like if say you do see something about somebody and you're fairly clear that like, oh, this is an issue for them. And they'd be better if they, put their attention on it and did something to resolve it. Um, you have to make sure they're at a place where they actually want to hear that because maybe they don't, and if you come in, one of the things I've learned through the years with my coaching work, especially early on when I was doing it like a decade ago, geez, like a decade ago, was like if you even if you're totally right, if you yeah,
yeah, yeah.
hypothetically, not
Ideally,
for sure, yeah, but even if you are hypothetically totally right, and you tell somebody about this issue that if they just listen to you, hypothetically, they would be better off. If you tell them that and they aren't really ready to hear that, they will push back against you, and that actually strengthens their identity around their problem. So you're making it worse for them by trying to help. And you
yeah,
you can't do that.
yeah,
You have to let them have, as a very wise man once told me, you have to let people have their suffering. And you have to allow that for them. And then if it looks like they're asking for help, if it looks like there's an opening, maybe try. If they directly come to you, then great. Then you can do something. You can say, hey, here's what I think. Thank you for asking. Happy to do my best to help you with whatever it is. But if you present the solution before they're ready for it, you actually reinforce the problem. And I think that's very bad, obviously. And just if you are genuinely trying to help people, and you know that by taking this action you are doing the opposite of that, it keeps you on your toes as far as how to relate. Like the bodyguard, like you're saying, the bodyguard with the nobleman, like waiting until the time is right and the nobleman is at a place where he's ready to hear, he's ready to have the plates broken. He's at a place where he can hear that message and he's not gonna be resentful for forever. He's already so far gone he can't even hear, he doesn't even have plates to break anymore, whatever it is.
hmm.
um, so yeah, that's good. That's good. It's cool.
Yeah. I completely agree with that. Yeah, and I've seen myself sometimes. Maybe I've gotten good advice or something, but it's just yeah, I wasn't ready for it, and I got angry about it, or it pushed me in the other direction. Like you're saying, I formed more my identity more solidly around the problem
Mhm.
from being presented the solution when I wasn't ready for it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I like
It's
that. Let people have their suffering.
yeah, it's hard to do. especially if you like it. I guess it's hard to do when you have a lot of pride. And when you're, the more humble you are, the easier it is to do because you're like, well, I don't really necessarily know anyway. So I'm sorry they're suffering. That's rough, but like, I don't know what to do about it. And so who am I to step in and try and help them? And if it has enough of an effect on you or me or whomever um that you start coming to an understanding of it, 6 years of going around and seeing what's wrong with the situation, then maybe you understand the right plates to break, the right things to do to kind of have an effect. But if you just kind of come through and try and do it immediately, it doesn't work as well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, just one last thing about dialogue that maybe people, this might be new for some people. I've read a little bit about during when the Buddha was alive, the Siddhartha, the Buddha was alive. Um, he would, I mean, I mean, tell me if I'm totally wrong, but I thought this, people would come to him with questions, and there's some kind of story of where somebody came to him one day and said, "Is there a God?" And he said, "Yes, there is." And the next day, someone came to him, "Is there a God?" "No, there isn't." And there was some reactions and everything, but um, there were other times where people came to him and would ask something or want to dialogue, and he would simply be silent. And that had a profound effect on me because I feel like all of these three kinds of proto dialogues that I just related, um, all indicate that he has a deep understanding of what is happening in when those people are coming to him and saying those words.
Mm.
That, I don't know exactly what it is in those situations or in whatever these proto dialogues are indicating, and it's probably multiple things. But in my experience, when people are dialoguing, are coming to someone else saying words, you have to be able to read them and to understand what's going on. And you're not like a book or some kind of electronic book where they say this thing, you have this response that you make to that because you believe this is true about the world. It's more like, I mean, for example, maybe the person in the first thing that I said came to the Buddha, maybe they wanted to know, is there a God? Because, like, I don't really want to take responsibility for my life. I want to know things will kind of work out. And can I just kind of be lazy morally? Like maybe
Hmm.
he sensed they kind of meant that when they asked. Or maybe the other person, is there no God? Maybe, I'm just trying to say that, yeah, dialogue is much more mysterious and much more about the truth, like a very multifaceted, complex truth, rather than, yeah, this sort of cookie cutter approach. I believe this about the world. It sounds like the words that you're saying mean the opposite of what I believe about the world, and so I'm going to contradict it.
Hmm.
I just think things are much more complex and interesting than that.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. I think that's developing that level of discernment is what we're talking about as far as the bodyguard coming back and meeting the nobleman at the right time of being able, help people when they're ready. How I don't know how one does that, per se. Like I mean, there's wisdom practices, there's, decades of meditation, whatever, but like just in a moment, like how you know for sure that you're seeing something that is true for the other person. I mean, I kind of trust the Buddha could do it, but I'm not going to necessarily trust myself that if somebody comes and says, like, is there a God? I'll just look at them and be like, yes, they mean they mean they want to be lazy. And so I'm going to say, yes, there is a God and they will punish you if you don't get to work, or whatever, because that's what they need, because somehow I know that's what they need. I think there is a kind of knowing in that sense. I've but I've experienced it sometimes from people, like somebody says something very insightful. It could just be a friend. Like it doesn't have to be some grand enlightened, being. There's just this moment of connection between two people where something insightful comes
Yeah.
through and hits just right. But how
Yeah.
to be open to that and how to consciously cultivate that openness so you can provide it for other people at the right time in the right way, and kind of just be a generative force for that in the world. Like that's kind of something I would want to develop in myself before I die. One of my personal goals of being alive, I guess. But I don't know how one would necessarily go about doing that, because I feel like there'd have to be some trial and error, but error feels so dangerous when you're talking about reinforcing people's problems if you come at them wrong. So
Yeah.
it's tricky stuff, man. I don't know.
Yeah, it is. I mean, but I think I mean, one thing you can be circumspect, right? Like you can be, you don't have to say, as you're talking, you can read the person. Is it, you know, and I think we do have to have faith too, right? We have to have some
Mhm.
kind of confidence, some kind of faith, and just know that, yeah, it's not really up to us. I mean, what they end up doing with their life, whatever.
There's a higher power again. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good reminder. Yeah.
And nothing in life is for sure, right? I mean, you have this common sense, which means I think the all the senses are in balance in the right way, and there's this kind of sixth sense we call common sense that just that's all you can do to approach any situation. You try to, like the Hippocratic oath supposedly is, do no harm, and then do your best, and that's, other than that, we have no idea how people will respond. I mean, sometimes people do terrible things. Sometimes they impulsively just kill themselves. I mean, but really bad stuff happens, unfortunately. But we just have to go forth and take that hero's journey, or whatever metaphor you want to use. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. In Zen they talk about, and I'm not sure it's quite the same thing, but I love the phrase they talk about stepping off the 10,000 foot pole. So you're on the top of a 10,000 foot pole and you have to like take that. You just have to step off of it. There's nothing you can do. You just have to, you just sort of like there's that faith. You just take that step and you don't know you're stepping into like empty space. You're stepping into something where there's no ground, there's no certainty, but you still have to take an action. So maybe they are
yeah,
talking about the same thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
stepping off the 10,000 foot pole. So
Um,
that's kind of, I mean, doesn't Buddhism and I think Eastern philosophy in general, they have an easier time with dealing with just life is full of uncertainty, right?
mhm, mhm, mhm. Yeah, I would think so. I mean, Buddha, the Buddha's last words were, um, something like all component things pass away, which is like everything that arises, everything you experience, everything that's a thing is already passing away. Once it's a thing, once it's come into existence, it's going to go out of existence. And that's sort of the core teaching, sort of one of the central tenets of Buddhism is just whatever comes up goes. And so when you have that being, the underlying philosophy or ontology of your culture for millennia, like it does have an effect. And I don't know all the Eastern religions. I'm not,
Mm,
I certainly can't speak much to Hinduism, but I know Taoism very similar. Just sort of this uncertainty and being able to live with this uncertainty. And whereas I think we're very attracted to that in the West because especially modern times in the West, our cultural tradition is no, you can be very certain of it, and you do it through the scientific method, and you have a hypothesis, and you run experiments, and that's not wrong, but it's incomplete, and we mistake it for like the way everything works. And so there's this draw for something that allows us to have some uncertainty because then there's room to breathe.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
And even for that science, I think that picture is sort of this scientism that people often use to talk about morality too. And the maybe the new atheists did this some with just how stupid all the religious people are, and they've messed up history and everything. According to Vervaeke, I mean, science doesn't, and we know that scientific truths are tentative, right? We've gone through the history of science long enough to see like these truths that people maybe were so certain about ended up being only partially true, or almost the opposite is true, or opposite also is true with like quantum mechanics or something like that. So, uh, we and Vervaeke talks about plausibility as really the measure of scientific truth rather than certainty. And of course, he goes all off on how certainty has, I think, like maybe you're indicating, has kind of ruined our culture, as because we're looking for certainty all the time, and we're never finding it, and we're despairing, and we're blaming all sorts of things on it for not being certain, and everybody else is stupid, and but I'm alone and I'm just in my mind. And
Yeah. Ouch.
I I, I did,
Can relate.
probably did a little
Um,
too much there, but
no, 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 it's good. It's good. No, not too much. I was thinking, you were talking about certainty, versus what was the other word?
plausibility, which I
Plausibility.
loved hearing that seems right to me. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree because it brings in that sort of the thing we're talking about in the East, like you're not quite sure. It makes things
Yeah.
more liquid. It makes them more alive. They're not so like solid and immovable and certain. I like that a lot. And I was thinking, certainty, plausibility, and like precision kind of falls in that same area, but then also permanence. And I think we sort of lump them all as if they're the same thing,
Mhm.
as if you were certain, then you're guaranteed to be precise. And if you're precise, you're guaranteed to be permanent. And that's just the way things always are. And none of that's true. Like you can be precise about something that's plausible, and you can certainly be precise about something that's impermanent. I'm thinking of the Tibetan Buddhist sand mandalas. They tap the little things and they make this beautiful image. And that requires a lot of precision to create that. But then it's just sand. And I mean, they sweep it up at the end, but even if they didn't sweep it up, like it's not staying that way. They could leave it there and a windy day comes through and whoosh, the whole thing's gone without anybody laying a hand on it. And we forget in our hubris in the West with all of our scientific progress that like it's all based on plausibility. It's all based on things that may or may not change or may or may not be the entire picture. I think the ecological crisis we're in has a lot to do with the fact that the part of our brain that understands science and progress does not understand relationality. And nature works on relationality. That's how things thrive and grow in nature, is they relate to each other and they understand. And um,
Yeah.
and we forget that because we think we can be so certain and precise and consistent, and unchanging. Um,
Yeah, and we don't know about the second order effects or the externalities of the things that we're doing. And
because there's no relationship, because we can't relate. We're so focused on thinging and permanence and like concepts, that to relate, there has to be the possibility of change. You have to be able to take in new information about something. You can't be certain about what it is, because then you're not relating to the thing. You have a concept that you're relating to in your head, just what the concept is. Uh,
I would
so
say also it's we're focused on problems and problem solving when we're seeing a narrow problem. And often, I'm not saying all things we see as problems are not problems or anything like that, or we should never solve problems. But um Yeah, I think looking at things in terms of narrowly as problems. So this is a problem. We try to solve it, but then we're not net if we're not thinking of the broader implications, the externalities and things, we're literally, yeah, we're missing the bigger picture, and we could be we could be solving one problem and causing even bigger problems. So
Yeah.
I've heard once Alan Bloom said this, that one of the biggest difference between modern and ancient thinking is, and this may relate to the meaning crisis, is that ancient thinkers did not think problems were to be solved, but to be managed or to be lived with, or whatever word you want to use. Problems always exist, but we may have this assumption that, and this may lead to utopianism, that you know we could solve all problems possibly, and that
Mhm.
seems to lead to arrogance, and that's not a good relation with the divine either.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it kind of comes back to what we were talking about earlier about like things that stand in our way. Are they serving a purpose, and can we understand them, and can we have faith, and can we sort of surrender to the greater movement of whatever's moving through and causing all the change, and just sort of play our role within it as best as we can, go on
Yeah,
the 6 year journey if there's a 6 year journey to go on.
yeah,
Um, yeah, yeah, it's kind of beautiful.
yeah, I love that. That seems like a good way to end the conversation, unless you have anything else to say.
I'll end on that. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think there was more to this story than maybe we initially thought. It's pretty good.
Very much. I did not think there was going to be much at all, and here we are, like 2 hours in. That's great.
Well, yeah, I'm glad we got to talk, and talk again soon.
Sounds good.